Hello. 1 2 1 2 check. 1 2. Hello. Hello. Check. 1 2 1 2 1 2. Hello. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning. How are we? I'm good. I can see people are just being quiet, others are having some snacks to eat and so on. Right, let's hear. I'm sure some of you have been on the floor. What are we celebrating this week? What? Great, at least you guys are aware. And what is our theme for National Science Week? What is our theme of National Science Week 2023? Look around you, what's happening? Now I'm giving you the clue. What's happening? Look around you. We are seeing each other under the candle. Anyone who want to guess? See the hand over there. Transforming. That's correct. Let's clap hands for it. Transforming lives through the evidence-based science. Right, let me tell you a little about transforming lives through the evidence-based science. Just before we continue, my name is Tolani Nameka. I'll be the program director for this program that you are in this morning, that Sci-Bono offers you, which we call it Speak to a Scientist. As one of our learners is saying, transforming lives through evidence-based science, the aim of the theme is to expose you learners to approach problem solving and decision making, responding to the situation by using the available information that has been reached or experienced. It also aims in developing activities across the diverse sectors and allow robust engagement among the publics. This theme also has the sub-theme that are given, and in the sub-theme, it has two sub-themes. It focuses on energy and agriculture. And this year, we are celebrating an international year of millets. You know what are millets? You'll find out as you go along. When it comes to energy, building sustainable electricity together, power to the community, the aim is for you learners to participate and share your experiences and opportunities that are associated with energy, electricity, and now that we are load shedding. As schools, you are also exposing you to different career opportunities and skills in the energy industry, which can also follow starting from the subject choice to the tertiary fields of study. That is under the sub-theme of energy. Under agriculture, advancing millets, as I just said earlier, that this is an international year of millets. Advancing millets for a healthy diet. The contribution of National Science Week is to provide platform for general awareness of the contribution of minerals to food and production of minerals and grain products. You as learners, the aim is for you to get opportunities to go farming and to take agricultural science subjects with the purpose of solving food security challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, it is with this refuge at the very same time that we invited you learners and people who join us online to come and celebrate National Science Week 2023 in our Open Speak to a Scientist platform, which support the intention to provide an opportunity to clarify, develop theories via asking questions differently, and also to expose you learners to ideas and perspectives that of new understanding, and this can only be achieved by acknowledging the value of you as our learners to have your own ideas and empowering them to gradually take responsibility for your own ideas and keep abreast of this ever-changing environment towards building an understanding of the collaborative nature of doing science. And I trust from here, you'll learn a lot from the floor that you have been in, and you'll also learn a lot in this auditorium with the 1 hour that we're going to spend with you. With these few words that I've said with you, I shall now call upon our Senior Science Center Manager to come and welcome our visitor who will be engaging with you with the topic that we will be having. And our Senior Science Center Manager, Mr. Akash Dasrat, please come and welcome our speaker, Akash Dasrat.
Thank you, Program Director. And good morning to everybody. How are you? You're busy having your breakfast, so you're not really listening to everything at this moment, which is okay. It's okay. I'm excited to be here. Some of you, it might be the first time, but most of you probably have been here before. And like Mr. Mameka has said, it's National Science Week. So happy National Science Week to all of you and to all of you who've joined us online. My name is Akash Dasrat, and I'd like to welcome our speaker today, Nikisha Singh. She's currently employed by Sam Parks, Kruger National Park, as the curator of the invaluable Skukuza Biological Reference Collection, which comprises of around 25 and fossil specimens. She holds an MSc in Biological Sciences from the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Her MSc research predominantly focused on aspects of the biology and ecology of the southern tree agamo in an urban context. Collection, care and curation, educational facilitation, biodiversity, data management, and research support form part of her current duties. While her research interests lie in hepatology, conservation, and freshwater systems. She is currently pursuing a PhD, which will aim to bridge some of the knowledge gaps that exist in relation to amphibian diversity and conservation in the Kruger National Park. So without further ado, let me welcome on stage Ms. Nikisha Singh. Let's give her a big round of applause, please.
Thank you. Excited about science national. Okay, that's good to hear. You should be making more noise. Like make a bit more noise, guys. Let me hear the excitement. Okay, that's better. Okay. As Mr. Akash introduced me, my name is Nikisha Singh, and I'm currently employed by Sam Parks as a curator. How many of you guys or girls know what a curator is? Think about museums. What do you think a curator does? Anyone? If you think about natural taking care of a collection, any idea? Okay, so my job basically is to take care of, it involves a number of different types of specimens ranging from plants to animals. So I have a little reference collection based in Skukuza, Kruger National Park. It's a little facility, and we have a work collection of different kinds of fish, reptiles, amphibians, and a dry collection of plants and insects, okay? And altogether within the facility, we have about 25,000 specimens. So my job is to take care of that collection and add to it as well. On a day-to-day basis, I have many duties, but one of the most important components is going out to do field work. Because obviously specimens do deteriorate and they get old and fragile, so we need to replace them in order for more research to take place and educational facilitation. Okay. If anyone has questions as I go along, please feel free to.
I have a question. The specimens that you collect, how can you tell the age and how old are them?
So it depends on what we are collecting. So more or less, if you're doing animals, you would be able to say whether it's a juvenile, a sub-adult, or a sub-juvenile, etc. I mean, just by looking at the animal that you are collecting. Yeah. No problem. Okay, so my focus today is on freshwater monitoring and freshwater collections. Okay, all right. So we all know water is an essential part of our lives. Animals, people, we all need it to survive. And 71% of the earth is covered in water. This water comes from various sources, okay? Oceans, lakes, river systems, even moisture in the air. Okay. How many of you guys use water on a daily basis here? Everybody should be putting their hands up. Let's use water here. There's something wrong. Okay. Okay. So we use water from the time we wake up in the morning to have a bath, brush our teeth, get ready for school. We use it during the day to drink water if we're playing sports, or we need to remain hydrated. And till the time we go to bed, where we're cooking dinner or putting clothes to wash, or we having a shower before we go to bed. So it's part of our daily lives, right? Without water, life on earth would not be sustained. Okay, so now I'm going to speak a little bit about freshwater monitoring. But before I go into that, I would like to know if anybody here has an understanding of what freshwater monitoring is. Even if you have a slight idea, let me hear what your thoughts are. Why do we monitor something? Everybody knows the E. coli outbreaks that have happened recently, right? So obviously we need to monitor what's going on, okay?
I have an answer.
Mm-hmm.
We monitor it and say that it can be sufficient to the people here. Because if we don't monitor it, then use that in the future.
Okay, that's a brilliant answer. I think he deserves a round of applause for that. Okay. Okay, so why is freshwater monitoring important? The first point is we need to understand the quality of freshwater systems, right? We need to know what kind of freshwater systems are we dealing with? Is the water polluted? Is the water not polluted? Is it safe for drinking? And not only in the context of people, but animals as well. So for example, in the Kruger National Park, we need to know the major river systems. We need to know what is the quality of the water. Is it safe for the animals? Are they doing well with the water availability, etc.? Okay. Okay, then the second one is to understand the availability of freshwater systems in a particular environment. Again, I'm going to use the Kruger National Park as an example. So everyone knows Kruger is a protected area, right? Right, it's a protected area, and we have all different kinds of plants and animals, not only the big five. We have all small types of animals, reptiles, frogs, birds, and everything in there needs water to survive. And we have different sources of water, from dams that have man-made dams to watering holes, and then your major river systems such as the Letaba River or the Olifant, Sabi River, Crocodile, all of those are the major rivers. But we need to know how much of water is available management decision need to be. That's just one example, but within yes. Oh, girls have this time. No. Within my scale of macro invert. To know what water system, what macro invertebrates are there, what frogs we call these organisms indicator species. Is how of environment. It indicates a species. Yes. Well done for that. Basically have let's species of fish tolerance level probably very polluted rivers that have is a low. Then you might have a very that if that river system starts to become polluted, so if we go out and we do some sampling and we're able to ID and determine what species occur within a freshwater system, we are able to tell the quality of that freshwater system as well as the health of the probably like the surrounding area. Okay, everyone with me so far? Okay. Getting a bit stuck. Okay, all right, there we go. All right, so how is this monitoring done? There are several different methods that we use depending on what we are sampling. So for fish, there's different methods. For macro invertebrates, different methods. Okay. Has anyone ever heard of electrofishing? Or what we use it for? Okay. So electrofishing is basically one of the methods that we use to sample fish and to have a look at the diversity of fish occurring in a freshwater system. We use a device called a electrofisher that has three main parts to it. So so in the back, I'm basically holding a backpack that has a battery, and that battery acts as a power source, and the voltage can be changed depending on the freshwater system that is being monitored. Then we have electrodes, this part, and then we have the wire that goes into the water, and this creates an electric field. Okay. So we use something called waders, and obviously so that we don't get shocked in the water. I've been shocked a few times and it's not very nice. Okay, all right. So once we switch it on, an electric field is created within the river or the pan, wherever we're doing the sampling. And then the fish are temporarily stunned and then caught and put into a bucket. And once we've surveyed like an entire area, all of the fish are put in water in a big base. And then we measure them and we ID them to species level. And all of this data is recorded for reports later on. Okay. All right. We can also use something called a seine net. Right. And a seine net basically needs 2 or 3 people, and it can be a few meters long, so that it covers the width of perhaps a river, and then you pull along and then you trap the fish into a corner and then you gather them all out. And it's the same method. Big base with water in, we ID all of them, measure them, and then we use a method called SAS, which I'm going to speak about in the next slide, for sampling of macroinvertebrates. Okay, any questions? Everyone's good. All right. Before I move on to the SAS component, I'd like to speak a little bit about the collections that I do while we're doing the monitoring as well. So depending on the species that is the fish species that is being caught, I generally take 1 or 2 specimens per species that will then be incorporated into the School Cruiser Biological Reference Collection to be used by researchers, etc. So obviously we use the different methods for collection. And then the second step is euthanization. So permanently putting the fish to sleep, right? So we use something called clove oil. I'm sure you guys have seen this in pharmacies and shops, right? So we use 4 to 5 milliliters per 5-liter bucket. So the fish that are going to be taken as specimens will go into that bucket, and then within 10-15 minutes, it puts them to sleep humanely. And then I will check if there's any signs of life. If not, then the fish is transferred to formalin, because at this stage, no sign of life. It is now euthanized. It goes into formalin, and that's how we preserve them. Okay. And then, yeah. Okay. So as you can see, this is a little shelf where some of the fish specimens are displayed in our collection facility. They've got their labels, and there's something called bioecological data that is collected with each specimen. Any idea what kind of data we might need to collect with each specimen? Think about it. You go to the field, you want to collect something. What data might you need that will be useful at a later stage? Anyone? Okay, you can take genetic material, yes, but we're just talking about like written data. What would you write? Okay, think about it in this way. If a researcher came to you and they wanted to use this specimen at a later stage, and they needed a whole lot of data about where this fish came from, etc. So if you were there in the field, you collected this specimen, what would you take down? What would you note down in your little field book? Okay, let me give you guys an idea. First of all, you would do a habitat description, okay? You would talk a little bit about the habitat, and what river the fish was found in. Was it the Sabi River, Crocodile River? You would take a GPS coordinate. Say if you wanted to go back and try and find that same fish species. If you had a GPS coordinate, obviously it's going to make life much easier. You would take down a date. Okay, so all of that kind of information is what the label within our collection has. And then obviously a picture of what the actual fish looked like before it was preserved. Okay. Any questions here? Okay. All right. And then just a little bit about the fish diversity in Kruger. I've just put four of my favorite fish down here, right? Okay. So this is called an elephant fish. Any idea why we call it an elephant fish? Look at its little nose here. It's kind of like it looks like a little trunk, right? So it belongs to a group of fish that have a common name, or they're known as elephant fish, right? And then we have Coptodon rendali, which is the red-breasted tilapia. Something very cool about this fish is when you pick it up, the underneath or the breast here, it goes red because it gets a bit aggravated, okay? So we kind of turn a bit red maybe when we get angry. This fish is the same. So you don't want to mess with this guy. Actually, they're quite, I mean, they're not vicious, they just turn red, yeah, and that's the only sort of scary thing. This is called a buttercat fish, okay, and a branded tilapia. Okay, very beautiful. It has like this purple sort of tinge when you look at it in the sun, right? So all of these different species have different tolerance levels within a river system. Okay. So within a river system, we have, you have your indigenous species occurring, but you also might have different stresses. Anybody here can tell me what a stressor to an environment might be? What is your understanding of that? Think of the word stress.
Over here.
A stress to environment can be harsh weather patterns, such as a change in the climate. The climate is no longer usual, so it needs to adapt to a new climate. And another one is that, yeah, that's the only one I have.
Okay, no, you have a good idea. Good idea. All right, there's one. Okay.
Other thing. It's not. The other thing about environment stress, things such as hurricane, floods, and etc.
Good. Okay. All right. I'm sure everybody here has heard of alien invasive species. Alien invasive species. Can anyone tell me in a general context, what is an alien invasive species? Someone said something.
Here's the help.
Mhm.
Alien. An alien invasion species is a foreign life from Earth.
Well, it is foreign. It is foreign, so it can be occurring from a different country or a different continent. And what it does, it comes into a native habitat and starts to displace the indigenous species, right? Starts to use up resources, etc. So the species that occur naturally within that area start to suffer, right? So we have invasive species, plants and animals. Okay. So recently, actually for a while, this invasive species has been recorded in the Kruger National Park. It's the Australian red claw crayfish. Okay, so there's been a few papers and articles written on this species, and we're coming up with management decisions to be able to, manage and monitor so that it does not become an issue. Okay, and other stresses could be alien plants such as water hyacinth as well. You guys have heard of water hyacinth? Okay, it's an alien invasive species. Anyone else know of any other alien invasive species, plants?
Oh, I'm coming to you. Let's say let's cannibals.
Animals. Okay, do you know any other
Cannibals. Cannibals.
Oh, animals. I'm actually not 100% sure.
Is that one? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's an alien invasive. I'm not 100% sure. Okay, all right. Okay, but everyone sort of did that, okay?
Animals that are taken like outside to other countries. They can be
Yeah, no, definitely. So sort of through maybe the wildlife trade as well. A lot of other foreign animals might enter into South Africa or be removed from South Africa to other continents as well. Okay, great. Yeah, okay. Mhm.
Is morning glory time? The morning glory.
Morning glory, correct? Yep.
Turtle berry. The turtle berry time.
Okay, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm sure you're searching it there, so it has to be correct. Okay, so we all have an idea, right? Like everybody has an idea, so okay, we can move on now. Al-Qadata. Someone said something. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to speak a little bit about SAS, okay, SAS or the South African scoring system. Okay, so everybody remember I mentioned something called macroinvertebrates earlier on. Can someone tell me what a macroinvertebrate is? Okay, good, right? And these specifically have a life cycle that is fully or partially aquatic, right? Okay. Okay. So SAS is a method that basically samples macroinvertebrates. It's quite a simple a simple sampling method to learn. We use something called a SAS net, and this is mainly used in river systems, right? We work from downstream going upstream so that we're working sort of against the flow. And then when you hold your net, the net is placed in front of you and it must be placed right at the bottom of the sediment so that when you disturb the sediment, all the macroinvertebrates that become dislodged are now going to flow into your net, right? And we sample 3 different biotypes. Anyone have an idea of what a biotype is? Anyone want to take a guess of what a biotype might be? Okay, so biotype is basically like a microhabitat that a macroinvertebrate prefers. Different macroinvertebrates prefer different biotypes or habitats. Some might prefer streams or where the flow is a bit stronger. Others might prefer more vegetative areas, so where there's more vegetation cover. Some might prefer living in the muddier part of the river. Some might prefer living in the sandier parts, right? So we need to sample all of these areas in order for the sampling to be standardized. Okay. All right. So these are the 3 main biotypes that I'm going to speak about. The first one is GSM. GSM stands for gravel, sand, and mud. I won't go too much into depth of the actual sampling procedure, but when we sample, obviously you will be standing in the river and you're going to be moving across the river and upwards as well. So you will obviously have water boots on or a wader, and then you disturb the sediment and all your macroinverts flow into your net. So with the GSM, you will sample minimum 2 minutes, maximum 5 minutes. Then you will have stones out of current. Out of current meaning any stones that are above the surface of the water. So this can be in the sides of the river, sticking out of the water sort of. So you will sample those rocks. And then you also have stones in current, anything that is submerged within the water, you also sample those. Okay. And lastly, we have vegetation. Aquatic vegetation and marginal vegetation. Aquatic vegetation is basically anything that's submerged within the water. This can be algae, the roots of certain plants, and marginal vegetation would be, for example, your reeds. So you would sample 2 meters of this. Okay. Yes.
And the habitat in the piece of macro. In the-
So a biotype, it's just given a specific name, a biotype. It's a smaller sort of, what can I say, like a more specific, like it's quite specific. We saw, as I mentioned, we have the GSM, which is gravel, sand, and mud. We have vegetation, and then we have your stones in current and out of current. So the biotypes is a very specific, quite answers your question. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. It was getting stuck. All right. So each biotype is done separately. So once you've done your sampling, the sample is then transferred into a white tray, like that one there. And we fill a little bit of water in it so that we're able to see all the little macro inverts swimming around. Okay. So we take 15 minutes per tray to identify everything within that tray. Okay. And then we use, we've been using this book. It's Freshwater Macro Invertebrates of South Africa. It's a really nice book if you're into freshwater and you want to go about studying something like this, right? All right. And then all this data is recorded on a standardized SAS sheet. Okay. So this sheet is broken up into the top part, which has all the details of the site that you are sampling. For example, the date, you have collectors, the river. So this was one that we did for the Nashishaka River in Skukuza, and this was at the lower water bridge. Okay. And then the sheet is further broken up into different orders, right? So you'll have, for example, your stoneflies, Hemiptera, which is your bugs, Trichoptera, which is caddisflies. You'll have a bit more context once I show you some pictures, okay? Let's see. Okay, so these are some of the cool things that we find. Anyone has ever seen some of these bugs? Notice them in the rivers or water systems or anywhere? No. Okay, they're actually very, very cool. Okay, this is something called a cased caddisfly. It belongs to the order Trichoptera, right? These guys are very cool in that they make little cases out of different materials. Sometimes it might be wood, sometimes it might be stones, sometimes it might be grass. So if you see something like a little piece of wood moving around or grass, it might actually be one of these guys here. Very, very cool. And we have, there's many different types of them, and each different type uses a different material to build its home. Okay. Then we get something called stoneflies. These guys live in rivers where the flow is very fast, and they have something called a high sensitivity value or quality value, meaning that they need very clean waters in order to survive. So if you are not finding these guys in a river system, it means that the water quality is not that great. Okay. Then we have water pennies, dragonfly larvae, water boatmen, and one of my favorites is water scorpions. They're very, very cool. Harmless. They might kind of pinch you if you try to pick them up, but they're very harmless. Do you guys think this is a real scorpion? What do you think? What do you think this is? It's a bug, okay? It's a type of bug, but it looks like a scorpion. So therefore we call it a water scorpion. Okay. All right. Okay, and then just one more thing I wanted to note down here is, okay, so here's your quality value. So each type of macroinvertebrate has a different value. And these values are used to calculate something called a ASTP. ASTP is your average score per taxa. So this kind of final value here is what's going to go into a report, and then it's going to be able to tell you about the quality of the river, right? So once you've recorded all of your data, your different types of macroinvertebrates, and then how we record them is, say, for example, if we were looking at GSM, which is your gravel, sand, and mud, and we looked at, we looked at dragonflies and damselflies, right? We looked at this specific one. And A abundance, if you look here at the bottom of the sheet, an A abundance would be 2 to 10. So we break them down into different groups. If it's 1, it's just 1. But an A is 2 to 10. B is 10 to 100, and a C is 100 to 1,000. Okay, so that's how the abundance is noted down. Okay. And so why do we do these freshwater collections and monitoring? Okay, there's various reasons for aquatic research. Say, for example, someone mentioned something about genetics here, which is really good. If there is researchers, or if there's need for genetic work to be done, before the specimen is put into formalin, a fin clip is taken and then put into ethanol, and then genetic studies can be done from that. To look at distribution and biodiversity patterns, we might need to know populations increasing, decreasing, and what management plans need to be put into place for this. Okay. Yeah. And what species occurs where in water river systems. Okay. And that's it. Thank you, guys. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to ask me.
Wow, that was brilliant. I didn't know so much around water in Bishop, because we don't live around these areas. So this has taught me to travel a lot and start doing fishing. I'm aware that our visitors have been asking questions and we've been engaging with them. Even there are those who have been taking some notes and so on. So we don't want to leave such learners behind. If they still have questions, I think in about 5 minutes, we can take 3 to 4 questions if we still have questions from our own audience. By the raise of the hands, we'll take the mic to you, and you can have your question before I release litigation on the floor. Raise the hand. Visibly, please.
I have a question. So after the research you do, what do you take?
Can you repeat?
After you're done with your research, what happens to the animal?
What happens? Okay,
Yeah.
so once the sampling is sort of done, let me just give you a little bit of a background. We do freshwater sampling in the Kruger National Park generally 2 weeks every September. All of this data is collected through doing fish surveys, SAS, and also other monitoring that is included, where we look at vegetation, we take down different parameters of the rivers itself, like dissolved oxygen, temperature. That's going into detail now. So all of this information is taken, it's recorded, and then different stats is done and reports are drawn up by our freshwater ecologists or freshwater scientists, and then different decisions are taken from there depending on what might need to be done. So this all filters down into managing the freshwater systems in Kruger.
Hello, I have a question. Is fish both terrestrial and aquatic?
So from my knowledge, all fish are aquatic. But for example, catfish have a tendency to be able to survive in very drought-stricken areas. So if a river or freshwater body dries up and the catfish is still in there, they might survive buried sort of in the mud, and they can sort of walk short distance. We've seen that, but not really walk. But I would say aquatic.
Harmful to remove fish from eating.
So it's done, so for the monitoring part, it's done very quickly. So once we take the fish out and we've measured them and ID'd them, they go straight into the water and with no harm, no negative effects on the fish itself.
I have another question this side.
Yes, you see, this is why I don't like. When you start doing your research.
Sure. Okay. Well, within a natural environment, you don't want to sort of manipulate the environment too much, because within protected areas, you want to leave it as natural as possible. So it just depends on management, and it depends on the species itself. So you do know we have species of special concern, whereas a species might be vulnerable or it might be endangered, etc. If it's such a type of species, then obviously management decisions would be put into place to try and alleviate stress factors and such. If that answers your question. Then you would, yes, then we would put in monitoring protocols, or we would, do more to be able to conserve that particular species.
I want to understand how electricity applies in it.
Sorry, can you please repeat?
I want to understand how electricity applies in it.
Okay, wait, let me come up there. Here, let me see. Yeah. How does?
Electric fields apply in water.
Oh, how does it work? All right. So the device that we use is called an electrofisher, right? It has a power supply, which is basically a battery that gives the device power. And then we have two electrodes, as you saw. It's that little device with the round metal and then a wire that goes into the water itself. So that creates an electric field. Okay, that's how the electric field is created inside the water. Does that make sense? Okay. It's basically, if you think about a circuit needs to be closed. So with the two electrodes within the water, it's creating that closed circuit for the electricity to flow.
I just wanted to ask if, can the species be brought back to life after being euthanized?
No. So once they euthanize, that's it, because those specimens will be specifically used for research, DNA studies, etc.
Please ask, how is electrofishing actually prohibited?
How is?
How is it not prohibited? Because isn't it harmful to the fishes themselves? Isn't electrofishing harmful to the fishes themselves?
No, it just stuns them for a few seconds. So put them in and then they're taken out and put it back into a body of water, and then they're revived to get perfectly fine.
And my question is, what careers are there like in the field that you're doing?
Okay, so if you're interested in aquatic biology specifically, you can become a freshwater scientist looking at various aspects like fish, macroinvertebrates, vegetation, the actual river system, the habitat within the system itself. You can become a SAS expert where you focus on macroinvertebrates only, or you could choose to focus on fish. There's something also called diatoms, which is single-celled algae. There are researchers that focus just on that as well because they can be used as indicator species. So there's a variety of aquatic research that you can go into or positions. It just depends what your interest or where your interest lies.
So I just want to ask, like, what will happen if I take a fish from the river and place it in the ocean or in the sea? If I take a fish from the river and place it in the sea, will it survive?
Okay, it won't, because obviously freshwater fish and fish in the sea have different adaptations, right? Because we all know the sea contains a lot of salt, right? And freshwater fish or fish that live in rivers might not be adapted to live in that kind of salinity, or even other factors might affect them.
Can I ask something here? I heard this, you told us about that thing that you said that they're using it for draining fish so that they may sleep for some minutes or hours, I don't know. So I wanted to know, do you use like the drop, do you like put how many drops inside?
Oh, okay. So basically, okay, guys, maybe I must just reiterate this. So euthanization basically means to kill humanely, right? Because these are going into the museum and they're going to be preserved as specimens for hundreds of years, right? In 70% ethanol. So in order to euthanize fish, we use 2 to 5 drops of clove oil per 5-liter bucket. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
All right.
Who had a question? You need a mic. Oh, let's wait for a minute. I have a question. There's a difference between the old species and the current species. So what caused the genetic change of these species?
Depending on what species it is, and depending on what taxa, is it reptiles, frogs, fish, it could be environmental, certain environmental conditions that cause adaptations, and then this could be genetics. For example, sometimes you might get some species of frogs that become very cryptic, where they sort of the morphology or the physical characteristics look the same, but the genetics are different. There's many drivers, environmental, maybe the habitat itself, from my limited knowledge on that. I hope that answers your question.
Right, I think I've seen some, many of the learners highly informed with the topic and very engaging. And that is very impressive.
Okay,
I can see as now. So unfortunately, because we are also going on live, we need to respect time.
okay,
We
well,
definitely
I do hope everybody enjoyed this talk and at least learned something from it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I hope I learned a lot about Okay, thank you so much. So,
Having me, and thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of National Science Week. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks. Oh, thank you so much. Oh, that's out.
That brings us to the end.
Oh. I hope that was okay. I thought about.